More winter showing up the maps than we've seen so far this season.
But
a little
it's
later.
Yeah, sometimes it does wait till January, and then it reminds us that we are in winter.
We are here, and we know where our first storm goes.
We saw that in California. We had snow in Mount Charleston, just to the west of Las Vegas yesterday. Today, it's Albuquerque's turn. Snow in the area already, and we'll see probably a rain-snow mix. Our temperatures are going to hit the low 40s, but overnight tonight drops to the 20s, and so then we could have some tough conditions on the roadways. That's the guy. That's the spin that we're tracking here as this moves here through the southwest. You see that that's going to be the energy that we watch with snow today, New Mexico, tonight into Kansas, and then eventually into the mid-Atlantic. That's the piece of energy that's going to instigate things. Now, we watch snow at the moment here falling across parts of New Mexico, some of this into southern Colorado, not a ton of that actually falling right now. And I don't think this is a Denver storm. It's just too far south. We are getting snow reports coming out of Farmington. Oh, by the way, Flagstaff, we picked up about 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 inches of snow there, drying out now, but still could be some slick spots. So heads up there. We've got snowfall concerns with winter storm warnings, mainly higher elevations, but does include parts of I-25. Then we jump out into the plains, I-70 under winter weather advisories. Snowfall through the day today, by tonight spreading over into the Texas Panhandle, then over into Kansas, maybe even Nebraska. Kansas City, not out of the question. You get a little bit out of this, not a big snowmaker for you. And then this all heads east. And as it does, there will be a rainy side and a snowy side. So Alex picks it up where it rains.
Yep, soaking.
And how long does it last? And that will really determine how big of a risk this becomes. So this is new actually. We now have a high chance, a high confidence of getting a 10th of an inch or more here into western Virginia between Wytheville and Roanoke here. This probably includes parts of I-81. So we're going to be concerned with that as a big travel problem, maybe even beyond. We've got a medium risk outside of that, Asheville up to Charlottesville, and then a low risk, but not a zero risk, Greenville, Charlotte, you're in that, getting up into parts of western Maryland and northern Virginia too. Leesburg, you're not out of the question. What happens when you get ice concerns is that it's all about the layering of the air and what the temperature profile looks like. Cold air gets stuck at the surface, and when that happens, like we're going to have somewhere in here, and there's warm air aloft, you end up with a freezing rain scenario because the snowflakes that form way high up in the sky are going to melt, but then they can refreeze when they hit sub-freezing temperatures at the surface. And we will have sub-freezing temperatures at the surface. This is Saturday. Everywhere in blue will be below freezing. It's a lot of us, right? But what's going to happen throughout the day as the moisture continues to advect in, that's actually going to come in with some warmer air at the mid to upper levels. And so now we've got above freezing temperatures on top of below freezing temperatures. And that's really what our biggest concern is here when it comes to the setup. So that's why we've got the pink and the purple on the map. That's either the freezing rain or the mix that we're going to be dealing with. So Saturday morning, watching concerns from western North Carolina up into parts of Virginia, about a 10th of an inch. That's the light pink color to a quarter of an inch here. That's the most widespread concern. There are pockets of some heavier amounts, and the heavier amounts are the places that we could see power outages and some of the ice maybe that could last a little bit longer. Traced to a quarter of an inch, generally hazardous travel and walking, spotty power outages. Again, the upper end of that is where you get more into the power outage concern. There is already a winter storm watch that is up for this weekend storm. It does include the mountain areas here into western North Carolina. It's an early heads up here because here we could actually change over to some snow and get some accumulation as well. Then speaking of snow, this heads into the northeast and mid-Atlantic with all of it.
Well, this weekend storm is what we consider to be a classic nor'easter, the threat of which should not be taken lightly.
Yes, here are a few things you need to know about these East Coast storms. Seen him rocking out to the...
Oh, yeah.
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it. Are you ready for it? Another one, a much more powerful storm next week is coming to much of the eastern half of the country.
It's bigger. It's more widespread. It's actually stronger, technically speaking, and we'll see that in the weather it brings.
Yeah, it's going to have a wide-reaching impact here from the northern tier to the southern tier. We got the snowy side, of course, the wet side, severe side. We have to talk about that, too.
This map, as Jen pointed out rightly so last time, and Alex as well, doesn't look like, okay, so this is no big deal.
Right. It's like, okay, January, yes, there's some rain, some snow.
Of course. But there's so much in this forecast, and there's so many hazards to deal with next week. A blockbuster of a storm, very likely, is going to be moving across the Midwest in a different track from this weekend's event, and are going to bring different weather to those of us, especially in the east.
Yeah, it's a stronger, more intense jet stream that will be factoring in here.
Yep, and we'll see that area of low pressure very likely develop on Monday and move along a path something like this. This track and those lines are taken not from one model or 2 or 10. It's the average, the ECMWF Ensemble average. So it's an average of a whole lot of simulations together, and statistically the most likely scenario here in terms of the track. Now, that track is also wherever it goes, because that's not still the only option. It's going to bring heavy snow on one side and heavy rain on the other.
Yeah, pretty amazing what we'll find. Now, this system here, in terms of the heaviest of the snows, it's going to be different from what we see this weekend, but there still could be some snow in the Northeast before we transition to what could be some heavy rain.
That's such a good point, isn't it? I know what you were going to say.
Yeah. Well, the many things,
Yes.
but no.
So
yes, we'll have a lot of warm air out ahead of this system, out ahead of the spiderweb storm, which is what I like to call these. We see all the isobars. It means there's a lot of winds. There's a lot of change in pressure, a lot of wind, and the winds are going to be from the south at first. But we're going to have some cold air stuck in, and there'll be snowpack left over. There's all kinds of challenges.
East of this track, very likely it'll end up as a very rainy event. But initially, as Alex and you and Jen were mentioning, in the Northeast and even the higher elevations elsewhere, we could get a burst of snow initially. We don't know the details of that. We'll sort that out later. But the bottom line is, east of the track, it's more likely to be a much rainier and milder scenario, which complicates things, which are going to get snow from this weekend's event, and we get the milder, rainy event also. But I also want to mention, too, Jen, your point about the deepness, the strength of this low pressure. This is the ensemble mean pressure, which is about 980 millibars. And when you average about 50 simulations and you still come up with 980 millibars, which is extremely low in your home barometer, that's intense. Some of the ops runs, the individual ones, are down about 10 millibars lower than that. Yeah. So
how low do you think this could go?
It could be high 960s. It could be. Not saying it's going to get there.
Right.
But some of those simulations show certainly possible scenarios like that, which would set records along the way, something to watch.
Which means we could be talking about some big-time wins with this thing.
Yes.
Big-time wins.
Yes.
Again, the track, we don't know yet. We'll figure it out. There's a cone here. We'll get to that later. But let's talk about some of those impacts because, again, you mentioned the possibility of heavy snow, and it could be, with the wind, a blizzard event.
Yes, I think it's a possibility.
It's a possibility. We got to talk about it. It's a possibility. And then with maybe some initial snow in the Northeast, but eventual rain, it could be flooding given all the snow they have on the ground.
That's the problem, right? You got the preceding conditions of snow on the ground, warming things up now with the system coming in with some heavier rain. That begins to melt. It's really problematic. It can be problematic.
And then the severe weather potential, because when you have all of these ingredients, a very dynamic winter storm with a lot of warm air on the eastern side of it will mean severe weather.
It's got all the trappings of a major event early next week that could snarl travel and lead to a lot of problems, a lot of power outages in lots of ways, not just from the thunderstorms, but from the wind in general, because there's going to be a windy event as well. So heads up early next week. We got the heavy snow in a certain swath in the Midwest, maybe some flooding rain in the Northeast, and severe weather in the South.
Yeah, so this is Monday, Tuesday, probably into Wednesday. We'll still see some impacts here just so you can plan your next week here. First half is going to be a mess in the east.
Mountains of New Mexico are going to do well with some snow.
So that's the system, the energy anyway, that's going to slide east, help garner up the moisture, get our surface low, get everything going for our mid-Atlantic Northeast storm.
You know what I think we're kind of missing a little bit with this, and we've talked about this a lot for the Northeast, potential for snow, is a lot of cold air. We don't have an Arctic high over southeastern Canada or some source of very cold air to ensure this is going to be a snow event for the big cities. Look at these numbers. I want to show you guys, this is great, and I want to show you the temperatures beginning midday.
You might call for 3 to 5 inches, but you look outside on the ground, and most of it is melted, so it's only like 1 to 2 when it's all said and done. But nonetheless, we won't be talking about snow here to the south. It's going to be a lovely day today.
Yeah.
Today.
The sun will be nice, but increasing clouds coming on in. It's going to make for some good sunrises and sunsets in the coming days here, starting from west to east. And tomorrow already those clouds are going to be filling in. And the rain too, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. That's thanks to, again, the disturbance that's right now impacting parts of New Mexico, getting into Texas. That's going to head east. And then heading into the weekend, look what we've got. There's our low that's really going to start to crank up here and move eventually to the northeast to be our big winter maker. But in the south, Jen, it's going to be a rainy maker and potentially a severe thunderstorm maker.
Yeah, potentially. We've got a warm sector. You've got the cold front. You've got the warm front or stationary front here. And that zone will be the area that we watch for some thunderstorms that could possibly go strong or severe. 2 spots. Tomorrow, it's southern Louisiana, kind of hugging the Gulf Coast here. Southern Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. But by Saturday, we do bring in most of the peninsula.
Absolutely. So a couple of days of tracking that severe threat, along with, there's going to be some heavy downpours too. That could lead to some flash flooding in some of these spots. So yeah, it really starts getting going early Friday and then works its way eastbound over the weekend.
In Baltimore and Washington here, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We want to talk about some specifics. What are the biggest challenges with this storm, and what aspects have you really concerned?
Challenging indeed. So when and how do you decide if winter alerts are going to need to be issued for this storm?
Usually comes.
Every single storm is like this in the D.C. area. I mean, no stranger to that rain snow line challenge. It's often a case of will it or won't it. So what makes your region so difficult to forecast for?
It's kind of
D.C. area. I was always peeled to the TV. Are we going to get school canceled or not? And oftentimes not. Because it was always
this one Saturdays, though. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that is true.
Exactly.
That is true. Now, there's still some time for the forecast to change. What advice do you have for folks there in Baltimore, the D.C. metro areas as they prepare for rain or?
So it's just a matter of staying on top of things, getting the latest information for the forecast, and being able to plan your day and your family's activities around it.
Yeah, solid advice there. I like that. The most routine, impactful thing that we have to deal with here for so many. Yeah. Chris Strong, warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Baltimore and Washington. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to
around these weather conditions. And again, you don't want to have to navigate through ice. That is the worst when it comes to wintry weather. And we have that risk. In fact, we're now talking about on Saturday. There's a high confidence of dealing with 1/10 of an inch of ice or more there in southwestern parts of Virginia.
Yeah, that's an update as of the last 2 hours. So that risk, plus you see the medium risk extending all the way to Charlottesville and down through Asheville. Outside of that, even Greenville, Charlotte, over towards Bristol, there's a chance. I mean, not most likely. You won't have to deal with freezing rain, but the temperature is just so close to freezing.
Yeah, and that's going to make the biggest difference, right? I mean, between 32 to 33, that makes all the difference in the world. So we'll have to keep an eye on things. But right now, you can see we're kind of the bullseye of where we could be looking at 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch there, south of Roanoke, dealing with that, and then also working your way to just north and east of Hickory in North Carolina.
Yeah, all right. So that you have brighter pink color. That's when you start to get more damage and power outages. For most of us, it'll be more hazardous travel. Walking can be dangerous here. That's what you got to watch out for.
That is just the most perfect setup, right?
Yeah, hard to find.
Well, not a perfect setup here for us in the Northeast because the temperatures, as you saw there in the west, plenty cold to support the snow. Here in the east, we've got the marginal cold that's in place. And so some of us will get the good snows or the big snows. Others kind of miss out on the boat.
Yes, so we've been talking a lot about the track of the low, how strong the low will be, where it'll be placed. This is one rendition of that with the European operational run for Sunday morning, which is a low that moves pretty quickly to the northeast and puts that rain snow line pretty much right along the I-95.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, we look at the GFS model, and it's a little slower with it. You can see the position of the low a little bit back off towards the south and the west. This scenario keeps a spot like Boston in that snow a little longer, so you'll be looking at maybe a better chance for some bigger snow totals, and even that kind of rain snow line is a little bit farther to the south as well here along 95.
Yeah, so again, still one to watch in terms of exact amounts, especially if you're in that edge of the precip. But just to give you a sense of how much snow, this heavy versus moderate is the colors we're using here. The purple puts us in the heavy category, and for Boston, it may even be very heavy in spots.
Yeah, absolutely. The European model and the GFS model have us in that range, a bit more when it comes to the GFS, but Boston right now solidly squarely in that very heavy to very heavy range.
If you'd like to snowplow, if you've got the hook up there for your tractor maybe here, get ready this weekend. New York City is a different story. It is a challenging one. We've been right on the edge the whole time. I think it's going to be hard to get that 1 inch of snow that we haven't seen in more than 2 years.
Could the streak continue? There's certainly a possibility the streak continues, right? Yeah. So much right on that edge.
But there will be snow,
not too far away.
Not too far away. Northern Jersey, yes.
So, yeah, if somehow we could maybe shift the track of the system a bit, maybe we do get into the heaviest snows. Still something that needs to be worked out. But the trends, and Jen, we always try to follow the trends, and they seem to be leaning towards the heaviest of the snows north of the city.
Now, one place where will be cold air is in Maine. And there is Arctic high up there in southeast Canada, and this is about the extent of where it's truly in place. So, yes, it's going to snow in Portland. The exact amounts will matter on the track, the low, and, how much of the precip shield is over us.
Well, how about we get you out there this week?
It's going to move along a different path, but it's going to be much more impactful in its own right, with a lot more wind, a lot more snow and rain, and severe weather as well.
From west to east. I mean,
Yes.
west coast too.
Right.
There's already winter storm watches up for the Sierra.
We're already getting ready for it. And guess what?
Go in order of how things are working and moving. And so the system that we're tracking, system number 1, is right now affecting us in parts of the southwest, including Albuquerque, where we have snow today. Temps will be about 40 degrees here, so we'll see how much of an issue it is on the road. But tonight, we drop down into the 20s with some snow showers lingering. So now we start to worry about freezing on roads and worrying about some of the travel conditions out there. That's the system. This is the guy. You see that cute little spin out there here. This is the one that dropped, about 7 to 10 inches of snow at Mount Charleston here just to the west of Las Vegas. So I know it's an exciting day for folks there trying to get out and enjoy some of that snow. But now as we track this system and it swings through the southern plains, we got to watch out for some road problems. Snow in New Mexico, little bit of snow in southern Colorado. Don't think, Denver, this will be bringing you much here. Not out of the question you see a flake or two, but you see where all the energy is and where the snow is right now. It is snowing in Farmington. Now, we do have winter weather advisories and some winter storm warnings that are posted, mainly up at elevation for those warnings. Everyone else under an advisory, but even out here into the Texas Panhandle and into western Oklahoma, western Kansas, western Nebraska, we're going to get a little bit of snow out of this coming in here through the later hours today, even tonight. This is about 6 or 7 o'clock, continuing overnight. And timing wise, snow falling overnight here, it's going to be sticking. Temps are going to be cold enough, so watching for waking up to some slick conditions in parts of Kansas, maybe northern Oklahoma. And then throughout the day, that'll be tapering off as we get you into your Friday evening across this zone. Now, that's one thing to watch out here. As we get into the weekend, well, the next system comes in, and we'll pick that up later. But let's look at what's happening just from this system alone. We've got about 1 to 3 inches, pretty widespread. Some spots 3 to 5. Albuquerque will keep an eye on some of the mountain areas surrounding you. 3 to 5 inches in Taos. We could pick up more than 5 to 8, or perhaps even close to a foot of snow there. Amarillo, Texas. Snow chances, not a huge blockbuster of a storm, but snow nonetheless a possibility. And we've got Thursday and Thursday night here later today into tonight is what we are looking for in terms of the timing. Friday, we're back above freezing, so hopefully road conditions do improve. Now, as we watch the system move south, it'll have a rainy side to it as well. Alex picks it up there.
Yeah.
And that's important. The fact that we'll have temperatures cold when we start the event is important because now we have some cold air at the surface, and that could lead to some freezing rain. And that's the concern in Roanoke, Virginia. Look at our temperatures, 31, 32. Now, the trend is for it to warm up, but how quickly does it happen all the way at the surface here? If it doesn't, well, we're going to stay with some wintry precip, and at the start could be a ice concern. Then we get you into perhaps some snow by the time we get into the end of it, but it's really going to be that atmospheric battle happening here for the first part of the event in western North Carolina, western Virginia. This is Saturday morning, I think, is probably your biggest concern time frame, maybe into the afternoon, but we look at Asheville, Hickory, Winston-Salem, even over towards Charlotte. We've got some chances for getting into ice accretion here, and it's a medium threat with Phil, Roanoke up towards Charlottesville. Hickory, you're in that zone as well. It's all about what the layers of the atmosphere look like. Cold at the surface with warm air aloft will lead to snow melting and then refreezing at the surface. And if that cold layer is shallow, it'll just be freezing rain and probably not sleet. So here's a look at where Saturday when we will see temperatures below freezing. It's a lot of spots. This is what's happening at the surface where we live and walk and drive and everything else. Then we see where the warm air is going to be aloft, this whole zone. So we've got a large area that we really have to watch that precip type pretty closely. Sometimes cold air is tough to scour out, so that's why we do have these concerns. We've got an area of maybe a tenth to a quarter of an inch. That's the light pink, even up into parts of West Virginia and southern Ohio. But this quarter inch to half inch, that starts to become a little more problematic and can hang on a little bit longer. So this is something we'll watch right into the weekend. All right, then this storm moves into the northeast, so that's where Greg picks it up.
Yeah, Jen.
Weekend storm system is what many would be considered classic nor'easter.
Yeah, something, the threat of which should not be taken lightly. And there are a few things you need to know about these East Coast storms. And biggest Swiftie there is, Dr. Greg.
Yeah, you should have seen me as we were playing that music.
You guys should have taken a shot.
But yes, Baffert region is going to be potentially much more impactful than the weekend one.
And more widespread, too.
Yep.
So
yeah. bigger, widespread, more impact. So we're kind of priming things with the weekend, and then we have to kind of do it all over again, but almost like a blockbuster, the sequel coming in just in a different area.
Yep.
When you look at this map, you're like, oh yeah, we put some colors on the map. It doesn't really tell the story.
No.
There is much more than colors.
So many more details.
Yeah.
There are a lot of details and a lot of hazards with this second storm, as you guys were mentioning. Heavy snow and wind, maybe, as you mentioned off camera, and I agree, we could see blizzard conditions in places. Snow from this weekend storm might end up eventually with a lot of rain as well on top of it.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. So let's talk about this whole thing as another trough by Monday gets situated over the southwest.
A bigger one.
A bigger one, a stronger one with a lot more dynamics to work with. So we'll watch the track of this very powerful area of low pressure move across the middle of the country Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. Look at this monster right here.
Yeah, and you notice the track going to be much different than the one that we deal with this weekend.
You know, I call the spiderweb storms the ones we need to worry about because it doesn't look like a spiderweb with the isobars.
Totally.
All the webs. When you have a lot of these are the ones that are really strong, intense low pressure systems.
This is going to be a very intense area of low pressure in all likelihood. What I'm showing you here is the ensemble mean from the European Center's surface pressure forecast. So it's an average of about 50 different runs. And when you average it out over that many options, and you still come up with an intense area of low pressure like this, you know this is a beast. It is going to be strong winds. On the snowy side, we could have blizzard conditions, squall lines, severe weather, all of it in play.
Yeah. And it'll probably be a quarter or a stripe of some really heavy snow, too. I mean, there'll be that sweet spot for snowfall, but just the wind blowing around the snow might take over as the biggest challenge.
That's such a good point. And because it'll be a swath of very heavy snow, but likely maybe narrowly concentrated, again, it's too early to really know where it's going to be, and that's why we show other possible scenarios of the tracks. Because not only did I show you an average of a lot of them together, when you look at the spread, different positions of that area of low pressure, and likewise, therefore, different positions of where the heaviest snow is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you think of a track that would be west of Chicago, you're dealing with mostly rain at that point. East of Chicago, you might be in that sweet spot.
Yes. All right. Well, what about severe? That's going to be another aspect along with the snow.
Yes. So the snow here starts out, again, this is a swath based on a mean of the forecast. Again, there's wiggle room here. It's going to bobble and weave. As we go through the next few days, you're going to want to turn around. But when we talk about severe weather in the south, and that we'll talk about next time, I think, as well, because that's going to be a big player. But the amount, because this track is going across the Great Lakes, it's going to bring a lot of warm air into the northeast. Heavy rain and flooding are likely over areas that have a lot of snow on the ground from system number 1 and the beginning of system number 2. We could get some snow in the beginning of this. When we end up this thing maturing over the Great Lakes, it could bring a lot of rain over that snowpack.
Yeah, and even spots that don't have a snowpack, it's just going to be that much rainfall that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be a blockbuster storm with all the hazards there.
All right, stay tuned. We'll talk more about this here through the day as well. We also want to check in with the cold.
Of mixture of rain and snow in between, with a lot of rain on one side, a lot of snow on the other. Exactly where that dividing line sets up, we'll figure that out. We still have time to, because there's still room in the forecast to change things a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that over the last couple of days. The models, GFS, the American models, been kind of doing this wishy-washy thing here, and certainly you could watch one way and then wish the other way.
And all of a sudden, that brings a lot of people into snow.
Wish the other way, is that what you? It really just depends on exactly where the low tracks. I mean, there's so many complicating factors. In the south, too, I mean, for us, it's going to depend on where do the thunderstorms set up, and, you know, do storms kind of steal the show from other areas? Absolutely.
Well, we don't have to worry about that Today looks fantastic across the board, wall-to-wall sunshine out there for us. Maybe a little coolish in Nashville to Little Rock, but overall a nice looking today. But that does begin to change.
Yeah, moisture will be on the increase. By the way, you know, we had so many really nice sunrises and sunsets earlier in the week because of the high clouds ahead of that system. Same thing's going to happen ahead of this. So just there's your sort of nice side to things. You'll get some pretty sunrises and sunsets before this comes in, but by the weekend, this is barreling in.
Yeah, we got the disturbance out there. That's really going to kick our low at the surface. That'll get going here. And again, this will be the one that has the wintry impacts farther to the north. In the southern areas, rain showers, thunderstorms, and some of the storms could be strong to even severe.
Yes, so we do have this warm sector we're going to keep an eye on, watching across southern Louisiana all the way through the Florida Panhandle. That's Friday. Saturday, we do bring in more of Florida and the peninsula. It's not an obvious big severe outbreak or anything, but there's a chance of severe storms.
Absolutely. And of course, with some heavy downpours, we're going to have to watch for some flooding. That's a risk that we face here anywhere in the green from southeastern Texas into Georgia, maybe just south of that 20 corridor. Flash flooding, a real possibility from some of these thunderstorms.
So we time it out for you starting tomorrow. There'll be rain on the move throughout the morning hours. You see it by about before lunchtime throughout Louisiana, New Orleans through the afternoon, Mobile, your ride home on Friday night. It's going to be a soaker. Panama City by evening. In Baltimore and Washington, here, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We want to talk about some specifics. What are the biggest challenges with this storm, and what aspects have you really concerned?
Challenging indeed. So when and how do you decide if winter alerts are going to need to be issued for this storm?
It usually comes.
D.C. area, I was always peeled to the TV. Are we going to get school canceled or not? And oftentimes not. Because it was always
this one Saturday, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that is true.
Exactly.
That is true. Now, there's still some time for the forecast to change. What advice do you have for folks there in Baltimore, the D.C. metro areas as they prepare for rain or?
So it's just a matter of staying on top of things, getting the latest information for the forecast, and being able to plan your day and your family's activities around it.
Yeah, solid advice there. I like that. The most routine, impactful thing that we have to deal with here for so many. Yeah. Chris Strong, warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Baltimore and Washington. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to, yes. So we've got an area, and this has increased from yesterday, the concerns, because yesterday it was a low chance. Now it's low to medium threat that we will have ice accretion of 1/10 of an inch or more. And that medium threat, Asheville, Hickory, Boone, Wytheville, Roanoke.
Yeah.
I mean, getting all the way close to that TC areas we were just talking about.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch this very, very closely because you start getting into those type of values, and really any values of ice can be dangerous, but you start getting into those values, 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, and you see some spotty locations dealing with that. That becomes quite more problematic for travels, for power issues as well.
For walking, you know. Yeah. I mean, you want to be careful out there this weekend, especially Saturday for the first half of the days when we'll have a lot of the cold air kind of locked in challenges. A trace to 1/4 of an inch, this is what we're talking about. It means hazardous travel, walking, and spotty power outages.
So as we time it out Friday night into Saturday, here comes the moisture. Notice it's early Saturday morning and then the transition back over to rain. So it's a small window, but that window could add up. Where we're going to be watching this area of low pressure along the coast, and as that happens, there's going to be a fine line between who gets it and who does not.
All right, so this is one track of the low. Again, not set in stone just yet. Want to make sure, keep reminding you that things will change as the low itself forms. But we're watching this as we get into overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. That's when a lot of the snow is going to be falling.
Yeah, so in this scenario here, this is the European models forecast. The low is moving a little quicker. So for a spot like Boston, that's going to, as it's moving quicker, kind of keep our snow totals not necessarily low, but lower than what they could be if this thing hangs around a little longer, which is kind of what the GFS does. Slower moving system towards the northeast. That's going to bring more.
I mean, we still have that rain snow line, so the position will still matter, but of course speed matters as well, and strength of the low matters too, because if you get more kind of robust air rising, that can create more robust snowfall.
There you go. So there's the European models. Look at things, and yeah, eastern Massachusetts squarely here in that heavy to close to very heavy range here when it comes to some of the snow. Told us that we could find GFS model. It's a little snowier now. Remember yesterday it was the least snowy model. Now it's actually taken over as being the more snowy model, at least for Boston.
At least for Boston, yes. All right, so that's one scenario that we are looking at. Let's focus in on New York City. Still waiting for our inch, of course. Look, there's a chance, but I wouldn't say there's a great chance, right? Is that kind of how you look at it?
Great chance to
get that inch.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There is a chance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet. I'll say that much. That's how close we are there in NYC in terms of where we are on that line. Best opportunities, northern Jersey sliding away to the north and west to get in some of the heavier snows. But again, both models have NYC right on that edge.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's not just about the snow falling, it's about the snow accumulating too.
Exactly.
Which is going to be part of the challenge with our temperatures. All right, let's jump up to Portland. This is where there will be cold air. There is an Arctic high, but it's way up in southeastern Canada and it kind of noses in here. So we don't deal with that rain snow line.
Exactly. It's just kind of peeking into the cold, right? And again, just cold enough that keeps us mostly snow here. You can see from down East Maine, you got Portland in there as well, and some of that heavier snow. The GFS model, similar story as well. Maybe seeing a few spots in southern portions of Maine that could get into the heaviest as well. So overall, both models showing heavy snow for
showing snow. I think that the concern there is the track of the low. You know, how close is the pre-shield really for you in Portland? Let's look at Baltimore and D.C., another one that's but tricky. But I have to say, I mean, the trend here in both models has been less of a chance of snow in town.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the exact same thing. You start looking at how things have been moving from model to model run, and the trends are having that milder air mass in place. So we may miss the boat here in at least the bigger cities, Baltimore to D.C., Western Maryland, better chance to get in some of that snow.
But, you know, even back towards Leesburg and Frederick, both models are trending less than they were a few days ago in terms of snowfall. You know, that said, things can still change.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Keep an eye on this one. Let's get into the out there. Let's look at some of the big events.
Up to date through the mid-morning hours.
No matter where you live, the Weather Channel has you covered.
That's right. We will get you prepared for what's ahead from coast to coast. Now, these storms are truly coast-to-coast weather makers. This one started in California. This is the first one that goes all the way to the East Coast for your weekend. We got snow here in Soda Springs, California.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, that's a pretty scene there, right?
We just haven't seen a lot.
We haven't seen a lot of snow in the West this year yet.
Yes.
It's been so warm. Now we're finally getting some. We need that more for the reservoirs to build up during the spring when it dries out.
Yeah, they just did their snow survey for January. 7.5 inches is all they could muster.
That's not nothing.
They just picked up 10.5 at the measuring site there. So that was certainly some good news. Now we got to watch the next storm coming in here, already making its presence known with a little moisture there in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, Cascades getting in on some of the snow right now. And you can see the forecast. This goes through Sunday. I mean, doing well in the Cascades and the Sierra as well. So adding to the snowpack, good stuff.
I feel like winter is finally here. You know, does it seem like with all the forecasts that we're looking at when we talk our first storm?
Our temperatures are going to be into the 40s, or at least near 40 today. And so that may have us mixing in with rain at time to time, although snow is in the forecast. Tonight, we drop into the 20s, and now road conditions may be a problem. You saw how it looked in Santa Fe. We could have a similar situation there in Albuquerque. So the system that we're tracking, this guy right here, is actually kind of two circulations with it. If I take a step back and look, there's one right here and another one still sitting back there. That's the one that dropped about 6 to 10 inches. Mount Charleston there to the west of Las Vegas. I know folks are very excited to get to the Spring Mountains today to see and play in some of that snow. You're done with it there. Now the system is on the move through New Mexico, and we are going to be watching for it spreading east as we get through tonight. We have snow falling in Albuquerque at 37 now at the moment here, so it may be adding up. The grass first. We'll keep an eye on the road conditions for you. We have winter weather advisories in the area, winter storm warnings in the mountains, including parts of I-25. This will be a treacherous stretch here through Raton Pass. We also have the winter weather advisory spreading out into the plains as that snow comes in tonight. And after the sun is set, I think things will quickly get slippery out there on the roads. Dodge City, Colby, and Kansas, Amarillo. We've got the chance for snow coming in and spreading through Wichita. Tomorrow morning, it will be snowing. And then Kansas City, we could even finish with a little bit of snow there later in the day tomorrow here. Probably not big accumulations for Kansas City, but we have a chance nonetheless to see those flakes, likely less than an inch. Most spots 1 to 3 in the snow, pockets of 3 to 5 or 5 to 8. Again, elevation will matter, and maybe into western Oklahoma, into the Panhandle, you've got a better chance of getting some bigger snow. Then this heads east. First stop will be with some rain and maybe even storms in the south, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Soaking storm.
Out for you to give you a sense of your planning. It's all about what's happening late night, overnight Saturday into for overnight Friday into Saturday morning. And so Roanoke, for us, you wake up. You might even wake up early because you hear some of that frozen precip out there. A little bit of ice is possible, freezing rain. Through early morning hours, we have that chance, that atmospheric battle will be happening. Maybe we mix in with some snow. Not likely to really get much accumulation. It's really more about the risk of freezing rain. And we have a high chance of that happening in parts of Western Virginia here, I-81 corridor, from Whitfield to Roanoke, or maybe just to the east of there. We've got to keep an eye on the accumulation, 1/10 of an inch perhaps, and that could cause a risk of some icing on the roadways, walking. I mean, the risk areas do extend all the way from Charlotte all the way back up to Charlottesville. We've got a setup in the atmosphere with warm air overrunning some cold air that will kind of get wedged in and stuck. And cold air is very stubborn, so sometimes it gets stuck down here at the surface. And when you have that and you get warm air over top of it, any snowflakes that are up there melt, and there's not time to refreeze, and then they refreeze on contact with anything that is freezing, and that could be roads, of course, or your front steps or your driveway. This is where all the temperatures will be below freezing on Saturday morning. It's a large area, right? But we're going to overlay where temperatures go above freezing, mid levels of the atmosphere. Look at that. This is about a couple thousand feet up. It's a lot of the same area. So there's a large zone that could be dealing with that threat for some freezing rain. I don't think it's going to be a huge amount, not the kind that's taking down lots of trees or power lines, but enough that will cause a travel concern, especially for the first part of the day. Ice accretion amounts are mostly about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch, some pockets where it could be heavier. And those are the spots, you're looking between Boone and Hickory and Winston-Salem. Those are the spots that could have a bit more issues with power outages when that ice is just so heavy. It could take down some trees and end up taking down some power lines. But again, glaze of ice does create a travel concern. So heads up early on Saturday. Then the system on the move to the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, where that rain-snow line becomes the challenge.
A huge challenge, Jen.
We reference Interstate I-95 a lot when we talk about nor'easters.
That's right. Not only is it an important transportation link up and down the eastern seaboard, it's also an unusual dividing line for weather conditions.
That helps drive our big storm that affects the entire east as we get through the weekend.
And everybody wants to know where that rain-snow line is. Now, it's pretty clear we're going to get a storm. And there's going to be probably snow somewhere. Question is where? Where the haves and have-nots, right?
Yes, but it's that gradient. You know, if you're on that line, and it happens to be where a lot of population lives, that makes it so challenging.
So challenging. And I-95 right along the coastal plain of the Northeast is so difficult.
Listen to on the radio for like when your school was closed for snow.
Oh, I was always the TV guy watching the scroll.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We had to wait for the radio for 330.
Oh, wow.
331. Yeah, you know.
That's hilarious. Oh, my goodness. Well, yeah, there's going to be a lot of, well, actually, it's the weekend, so that helps out the kids in the school for the weekend.
Yes, so that takes that out of the equation. Now, in the south, snow is not a question. The concern is going to be rain, maybe some heavy, and possibly thunderstorms.
Yes, that's the risk that we face here. Now, not today. Today is going to be gorgeous across the board. Wall-to-wall sunshine out there. In some of these cases, you'd be hard-pressed to find a whole lot of cloud cover, although we'll eventually see the high clouds moving in, and then things get rocking and rolling as this system gets to rocking and rolling for the weekend.
All right, so it'll start pretty quickly tomorrow. The clouds will move in. You should have some great sunrises tomorrow, actually, with that color, thanks to the mid to high level clouds that'll be coming in ahead of the rain, which is going to be there before the day is done.
So there's the low itself for the weekend, and the concern is basically in the warm sector of this system here. South of this boundary that sets up and east of the cold front, that's the warm sector. That's where we kind of maximize the threat for stronger storms.
We have that risk on Friday here, extending across southern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, really hugging the coast into the Florida Panhandle. By Saturday, we bring in much more of the Florida Peninsula.
Yeah, absolutely. So rain will also be a factor in this. Watch for some flooding. That's a real risk that we face as we really get things going Friday and throughout the day, spreading its way across Louisiana and through the lower Mississippi Valley.
In Baltimore and Washington. Here, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We want to talk about some specifics. What are the biggest challenges with this storm, and what aspects have you really concerned?
Challenging indeed. So when and how do you decide if winter alerts are going to need to be issued for this storm?
It usually comes.
Every single storm is like this in the D.C. area. I mean, no stranger to that rain-snow line challenge. It's often a case of will it or won't it. So what makes your region so difficult to forecast for?
It's kind of
D.C. area. I was always peeled to the TV. Are we going to get school canceled or not? And oftentimes not. Because it was always
on Saturdays, though. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that is true.
Exactly.
That is true. Now, there's still some time for the forecast to change. What advice do you have for folks there in Baltimore, D.C. metro areas as they prepare for rain or snow?
It's just a matter of staying on top of things, getting the latest information for the forecast, and being able to plan your day and your family's activities around it.
Yeah, solid advice there. I like that. The most routine, impactful thing that we have to deal with here for so many. Yeah. Chris Strong, warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Baltimore and Washington. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to, it's a matter of a degree. Much more than that is what we're going to be focusing on all here. And it's all about where is the freezing air stuck Do we have enough stuff in place to create this concern for a 1/10 of an inch of ice? It's a low chance, but it's a chance from Blairsville in Georgia to Greenville, South Carolina, all the way up there, maybe even to southern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so it's a wider zone here that we're going to be focusing on, and now a high confidence there that we could see a 1/10 of an inch of ice for greater southwestern Virginia, just south of Roanoke in that range. And that's a spot where we could be looking at getting that 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch trying to add up.
Yeah, it's not a lot of ice. It doesn't take a lot, though, to cause problems. Once you get into that 1/4 inch to a 1/2, you might run into more power outage issues. Most of the area, it would be like a glaze of ice that would cause travel problems.
So there you have it. Glaze traced to a 1/4 of an inch. Hazardous travel, walking as well. Really just got to avoid being out in this kind of situation. And spotty power outages. Once you get up into the damaging category, you start to be a bit more concerned with the power outages.
To time it out for you, so overnight, temperatures are going to go down to freezing, here below freezing actually at the surface. But warm air overrides that and gives us that concern for freezing rain here at least about midday on Saturday.
It's a few hours.
Have you looking out the window for that slow-mo snow?
Yes, I love that.
The best. It is the best.
It really is. Oh, well, we'll be watching some snow falling from the skies here in eastern Massachusetts. Here's a look at the forecast here. The European model squarely puts most of eastern Massachusetts, that includes us in Boston, all the surrounding suburbs, in the heavy to very heavy category when it comes to the snow.
The morning run of the GFS is now coming in, and we're getting you updates on that, and it's a pretty snowy look. Even snowier than the last run.
Yeah, so when you see that, both of those models really pinpointing this area of getting the heavy snow, you feel a bit more confident that it's not going to be a situation where we get the rain in Boston.
Right. I mean, there will be that rain-snow line, but it should be south of Boston.
Yeah.
We'll see. Look, we still have 2 more days
Still
to
some
go.
time. That's a good point, Jen. You're
still
right.
2 more days to go to get into this. New York City, still the rain-snow line risk here.
Yeah, this is where it's a much, much tougher call here. We've been talking about how New York City, we've been the snow drought, no inch snowfall in, 2 years? It's certainly possible with the system we may keep that streak going.
Yeah, it is also possible we get the snow. I mean, look how close the line is. It might be as much as the difference between Staten Island and up to the Bronx, right? I mean, there's going to be a line somewhere.
There is, yeah, absolutely. And again, we've got that setting up here for you from both models. The GFS, though, coming in and starting to maybe bring a bit more snow in through the city and across Long Island as well. So again, just model to model differences here, differences showing.
But I have to point out, like the GFS latest run is a lot snowier.
Yeah.
You look up there into southern New York, Connecticut, some pockets of very heavy snow potential.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, we work our way up towards the Portland area, and we are fully dealing with the snow here up through Augusta as well. Again, that's the European model, and then you look at the GFS model here. Not as much showing up around Augusta, so it's kind of bringing that snowier area a bit farther to the south.
It's bringing the whole storm a little further, and a little more compact, too.
Yes. Yeah. So, again, track matters, how strong it's going to be, all these details that have yet to be figured out that we're trying to do right now.
Snow forecasting is so hard.
Oh, man.
So is predicting which teams are going to win the big games this weekend. So, well, let's